Hello, friends. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another candid chat on becoming a knowledge worker. So, for those of you who are new to these becoming a knowledge worker sessions, let me tell you this is a platform where we bring people who are on the top of their career, professionals who've made it to the very top of their career, and chat with them about their career decisions. Yes, so in this platform, all of you can join me together to ask questions about how did these successful professionals deal with their parents' expectations early on when they were studying or starting with a job? How did they deal with parents' expectations? How did they deal with demanding teachers? And how did they deal with difficult bosses? So, this is your opportunity to ask questions to the topmost professionals of India about how did they reach their apex of success. In TKWs Institute of Banking and Finance, our goal, our intention is that all our students graduate to become great bankers and all our alumni become the best bankers of India. Remember, we are here to become the best bankers of India. So let us talk to these professionals and understand how they became the best and try to learn from them. So, if you want to be on this journey of becoming the best professional of India, make it a habit to join us on becoming a knowledge worker on every second Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Remember, make it a habit to join us on becoming a knowledge worker on every second Saturday at 5:30 p.m. And till the time you're not here sitting with me answering these questions, let's keep learning from other professionals how they made it. So now join me in welcoming our guest of the day, Mr. Sandip Ghosh.
Hello, Professor Amit.
Sir, welcome, sir. So Sandeep sir is
Thank you
an
very much for.
excellent counsel. I often go to him for advice, and every time I ask for advice, he comes with either a new perspective or he comes with a new insight. He's a former HR head from Reserve Bank of India. He's on the board currently with Motilal Oswal, Jagran Microfinance, Infomerics Ratings, and Universal Sompo General Insurance. In education, he's serving the board of TKWs Institute of Banking and Finance. He's also on the board of IIM Bodh Gaya, besides being on boards of several national and international educational institutions. In RBI, he has headed the governor's office for Dr. Rangarajan, Dr. Bimal Jalan, Dr. Y.V. Reddy. He has been the regional director with RBI, and he has also headed the HR practice for 18,000 employees. Besides that, after RBI, he has also led the institution called NISM, an initiative by SEBI, as a director through many uncharted waters. Now, sir, as a central banker, you became regional director. As in HR, you featured in the HR power list amongst top 50 HR people in India. As an educator, you made NISM and wrote an amazing story of financial education in India. Now, I am confused. Should I describe you as a central banker, HR professional, or an educationist?
No, I think Amit, basically you are a professional. If you are a professional, then any space which you occupy, you deliver, and for this, your initial years of education becomes very important. Your initial thinking, your going ahead becomes very, very important. So I would say that I am actually a central banker by profession. I'm a counselor by my own passion. I like to get
Okay.
into career counseling and advice. And as far as institution building, I had an opportunity to build NISM in its initial stages, and it was a great opportunity.
So, sir, to set a candid tone to this interview, I would start with a very informal question. Since this interview is about first 30 years of your life, uh, did your study went from school straight to post graduation like you would expect a conventional Bengali person at that time, or did it have any adventures like is trendy these days?
No, it didn't have. I went straight from primary school to post graduation, but it was full with adventure. And the
Okay.
adventure was I started my initial years of education from a city in Uttar Pradesh, Gorakhpur, which is today quite in news because it also happens to be the place, a constituency of the current chief minister. I did my formal schooling from Allahabad Boys and St. Francis, Lucknow. Uh,
Okay.
we were the last batch of senior Cambridge in 1971. And in between, I did also 1 year in Calcutta Boys. So it was Gorakhpur, Lucknow, Calcutta, Allahabad, where the schooling happened. And unlike a typical Bengali, I actually, from my primary classes to virtually post graduation, I studied in residential schools and colleges. I was a hostler from day one.
Ah,
So that was, uh, and it was a great learning ground.
okay. So, what kind of a student were you in school? Were you more into studies or extracurricular activities?
I don't want to justify my poor performance. I used to be a mediocre student. But having said that, we used to have two types of schools. One which were purely residential schools, and one which were partly residential and partly there were schools. Most of the schools where I went Amit, have I lost you?
Yeah, there was a network lag, so I beg you to repeat the answer. You were telling us about your school experience, uh,
Huh. So,
school residential.
uh, the, so most of the schools where I went to were partly residential and partly day scholars. Now, these schools have a typical, mostly the residential students are very good in sports, and the day scholars are very good in studies because I think they are directly under the binoculars of their parents. So they need to study more. And in school, we were more comfortable doing our homework and then getting on to the sports field. So I was a very good, I would say I was a very good sports person. And the only certificate during my schooling, which I really cherish and reading once in a while, is the sports certificate which was given to me after I passed out of school. And
Wow.
that is the only certificate which I like. And I used to be my house captain. I represented all the teams in the school, from athletics to cricket, football, hockey, whichever was the game, I was there. So automatically, I was in the middle of the class. I was a hard-working student, but bulk of the hard work went into sports, and this continued for a long time. Uh, I would say that in these schools where I went, and being a hostler, there was a lot of prestige if you were part of the school teams or you were a house captain. In fact, nobody knew who came first in the class, but everybody knew who's the school captain or who's the house captain or who under whom you are going to play football or cricket or hockey. So everybody was familiar to that. And so there are a lot of interesting institutions, but I learned a lot on the field. On the field, you learn a lot. One thing which you learn is if you just play around and don't shoot the goal, nothing happens. You have to shoot the goal. And that was the big realization part. whatever work you do, without outcomes, nothing can happen. So that was one big learning, and of all the sports, one we really have bad in it. A huge amount of flooding.
I think we are experiencing some network lags. So while Mr. Sandip Ghosh reconnects, he was talking about his early education, his early career, where he said that he was a lot into sports and he was a mediocre student. So there is a ray of hope. In fact, there is a ray of opportunity for all the students who feel that just because they were mediocre in school, they cannot succeed in life. No, you can definitely succeed in life, even if you were a mediocre student at school.
So one of the sports which helped me a lot was boxing.
Boxing, wow.
So I used to box for the Olympic Committee, and had I not started wearing glasses, maybe I would have landed up in some form, at least in the selection part of the Olympics. So it was, and in that 3 minutes of each round, when you were facing the opponent, life, everything you learned came in front of you. So sometimes you saw stars by getting beaten up badly, but it would allow you to keep in perfect health. It will prepare you for the future that you can stand up to anybody, anywhere, uh, because of the skill which you had. And it helped me a lot. Later on during my days in HR, when industrial relation used to be an issue, I was never threatened by any union leader.
I don't know whether many of your professional colleagues knew that you were a boxer in school.
No,
So,
most of them didn't know, but it was a it started that and this is what I say are the initial learnings. Uh, I may have been in class 2 or 3, and I was encouraged into boxing. And the coach, who was the housemaster, said, if you win, you get 3 points. If you lose, you get one. So there's no zero in this. So you went into it and you felt, even if I lose, I'll add 1 point to the team. And that's how the game started, that you wanted to contribute to the larger team, which was your house, and you went for. But it was great learning. I would say that we were fortunate to have very good teachers who would spend a lot of time with us, and also teachers were automatically marked to the different houses also. So if you were good in sports, you had a different level of respect in the class.
true. So we have a question from Pankaj. He's saying that it's very difficult to engage with sports and studies. Parents force you to go into studies more than sports. So how did you have such a pressure? Did you have to deal with parents telling no, studies are more important than sports?
So I did tell you that I can't say about a normal student, but since I was a hostler, 9 months of the year, you were not under the parents' direct control.
Right.
And 3 months when you went home, you were treated like kings, because your mother would always feel that you didn't get the right food, or you didn't get the right environment. So that way, it was a great growing up. But having said that, uh, my advice, even I and my wife were uh, we started sort of the concept of career counseling in India.
Right.
We always advise students that if you don't give 2 to 3 hours, active 2 to 3 hours in sports and physical exercise every day, uh, going ahead and being successful in life would be a challenge. It would be a different challenge, because
Right.
success itself doesn't mean that you become the CEO, or you have success means a lot of other things also, which I never compromised. So uh, my father once raised an issue uh, 2 years after my post graduation, and he said, and I still recollect the sentence. He said, if you want to go in for professional sports, we are ready to support you. But if it is just for the sake of playing, then I think it is time now to look at other opportunities also. And I remember that when it was an evening discussion. Uh, we were never under tight control. I feel that whatever we have become, or the three siblings we are, it was mainly because we had parents who had huge elephant's patience. I don't remember any time anybody asking for my mark sheet, or which class I am,
Wow.
or what I'm doing. They felt that if I'm buying books every year, means I'm going through to the next class. And I think
Lucky you.
that was enough for them. And uh, at this, we had certain disciplines, like the breakfast and dinner the family had together. And once the breakfast and dinner you were supposed to meet as a family, you knew indirectly that the outside time which you can stay away from the house is 8:30, which was the dinner time in our house. And you have to be 7 o'clock was the breakfast time. You have to be out of bed and ready to have breakfast at 7 o'clock. So I think those were indirect disciplines which we had, but I have never had an okay, except, and I'm saying this is 2 years after post graduation, because I continued to play. I represented around five, I had five blazers in the university also. And I continued to play and continued to study, continued to be somewhere in the middle of the class, or maybe in the two-third of the class. But I think there was a lot of emphasis on being a good person. There was
So,
a,
sir, you said 2 years after your post graduation, which means 1979.
yes.
At what stage did you decide to join RBI? How did the RBI happen in?
So
Because for history, I forgot to tell everybody that you've done post graduation in history, and then you were a boxer.
I did my undergraduation in chemistry honors, and my
Chemistry
postgraduation,
honors.
yes, and
Okay.
post-graduation in history. So I think there is a story behind it. I wanted to become a biochemist, so
Okay.
that's why I had taken chemistry honors, and ours was a batch and I went for my undergrad to Banaras Hindu University, which had that advantage of 11 plus 3. So senior Cambridge was 11 years, and then 3 years undergrad
Right.
was 11 plus 3 instead of 10 plus 2 plus 2. In those days, it was 11 plus 3. So I did
Correct.
my senior Cambridge and went to BHU. I used to be, I would not have got admission in chemistry honors had it not been for sports. I got 15% weightage for being a national player, and that is how I got admission in chemistry. My marks itself would not have given me an opportunity to join BHU. BHU, the standards of marks used to be very high. In those days, today it is
Mm.
very easy. In those days, when scoring marks was very difficult, the admissions used to end at around 75%. So had I not had 15% weightage from sports quota, I would not have. And the sports quota was not given to you otherwise. So like I landed up in BHU, that day the BHU team was playing DLW. DLW is the diesel locomotive work in Banaras. So that these two teams were playing, and I was made to play as a part of the BHU team to because there were a lot of people who came with sports certificate. Like I remember one person who came with me who was supposed to be a national swimming champion, and he started drowning when he was put into the swimming pool. So they would never take anybody until and unless they had tested you. So we went through that. And so I did my chemistry honors. I was very keen to do my MSc chemistry or MSc biochemistry. And unfortunately, the session got delayed by 4 months.
Oh,
And all through my 3 years in BHU, it was the first time we lost our kingly status of being a residential student, because every now and then there would be a strike and you would land up in the house. So that respect of coming once in 6 months went away because you were there in the house very frequently. And so I didn't get money. My father said to continue in this environment in BHU doesn't look good. So and Lucknow admissions had already got over. My parents were at Lucknow, and Lucknow admissions had got over. All admissions of all universities had got over. So I was meeting the cutoff for my biochemistry, but because I was close to 2 months late uh, for the declaration of the result, they didn't give me. I protested and went to the vice chancellor. Vice chancellor also did not do anything. Then I went to the chancellor, who's the governor of the state at that point of time. So governor didn't meet me, but his PS, who was a senior civil servant, met me and uh, told me that he has checked with the university how determined you are. So currently, if you want to study in Lucknow University, which has started 2 months from today, the only seat available is in Indian history.
okay.
So, uh, so although biochemistry was my first choice, like a typical North Indian, civil services was my also hobby, that I have to give civil services. So when history came up, I said, I was otherwise also thinking which other subject to take. So let me do post-graduation in history. And it was surprising that I topped the university in history. And
Wow.
that's why I'm saying, and my advice to the students in general, never make up that this is the last thing you can do until and unless you have tried and tested it and worked hard for it. So there is no, and in fact, there is a Johari's window. In that Johari's window, there is a square which says things which you don't know about yourself and things which people also don't know about you. And I
Right.
treat that window as the window of potential, that you can do anything you want, anywhere you want, provided you have the right determination, right counseling and guide. I, again, in Lucknow University, uh, Indian history was not a new subject to me because I did Indian history as one of my additional subjects for senior Cambridge. But to do it at postgraduate level, it was new. And but the teachers were very supportive, very helpful, and I did top the university. I've never scored that amount of marks in my life.
So a
And
science student topped history program, is a
yeah.
perfect example for everyone that there is a hidden potential in all of us, which we don't know about. So that we should never hesitate in changing our streams if the time and the situation is demanding that. So let's all be agile, like Sir was. So we're very eager to also understand how did this history and aspiration for civil services ended up in RBI.
So I went through the rigor of sitting for the civil services. I made it both to the Indian Police Service and Indian Railway Service. And simultaneously, when in Northern India, at least during those days, I do not know whether things have changed now or not, but during those days in Northern India, uh, the only way of getting into a good job was through a competitive exam. There was nothing available off the shelf that you can join as a. I did join as a management trainee in Bharat Petroleum, but it was very short lived, not even 2 months. And that principally came up because my father worked for Burma Shell, and we had grown up with that background of people working in the oil companies. So, but this 3 years between my post-graduation and my joining the Reserve Bank of India, I did Bharat Petroleum, I did the civil services, and I also qualified for the Reserve Bank middle management, not the probationary stage. So when the choice of joining the civil services was that one of my uncles, who used to be DG police in UP in those days, uh, he said, you have option to join the police and you have to option to join the Reserve Bank of India in the middle management cadre. Your salary would be twice of what you get in the police, and you will be working in state capitals, and you will be responsible for the economy of the country, the banking sector as a whole, for currency management. And I think there is a general feeling that the person who's doing a particular job, he feels that the other side is always green. And he was an important person in my life to suggest to me that RBI would be a better option. To be very frank, I had no idea what RBI does, except that it's the governor signs the currency note. At that juncture, I had no idea. And I was surprised that in my batch of people who joined the Reserve Bank of India, 35 people who joined the Reserve Bank, 28 of us were from the civil service, who left the civil service to join the Reserve Bank of India. 28 of us out of 35. So it was a very big number, and you can imagine what type of uh, positioning RBI had in the minds of people when they were wanting to select a job. And
So
I
it
would
was
say,
the charm of Reserve Bank of India, which they had built, where you wanted to work for the organization and the cause it stands for, but you didn't know much about what happens in the job.
not at all. I had no idea. I knew that your salaries are much money. You are 10 years senior to the state bank professional. You are
Right.
10 years senior to anybody in the civil services at that point of time at the entry level. Because the Reserve Bank grade B was the middle management in the Reserve Bank. And you started with an additional advantage. And if things worked out all right for you, by the age of 47 or 48, you were a chief general manager in the Reserve Bank of India. So, means before you retire, you will have a position of staying at the top for around 10 to 12 years so that you could direct the policies in whichever department you worked. So
So,
that
sir,
was
there are
one
more than
thing.
a million students now, who harbor the aspiration of getting into public sector banks today. And the competition is intense, and you are quite an authority on future of work in India. You think about it, you comment often on it. I want you to also comment at this juncture about how do you see the future of government bank jobs given the backdrop of mergers of public sector banks and the financial technologies taking over conventional services.
So you see, it's a good question, Amit, and there is always this challenge. In fact, as a part of the Reserve Bank, uh, we, we don't boast of many things which we have in our country. We are very critical about those things which we don't have, but we don't boast of the things which we have. For example, we have one of the most robust payment and settlement system in the world. So, as a part of RBI, we went into computerization much before anybody was thinking about computers. And the general protest from the public at large was that if computers would come, jobs would be lost. And I do not know how many dharnas or how many lockdowns we had to face, principally as an opposition for computerization. But jobs only increased by millions with the coming of computers. So the future of work with whatever, see, the technology provides the why, technology provides the how, but the human beings provides the why. Why do you need the technology? Then the technology can tell you how to do it and how to go about it. So that part, the humans would never lose their importance, whatever may be the level of technology. Public sector banks, you are very right. We are already in a phase of consolidation. But these banks are huge. When I say that we are in a phase of consolidation, the banks are huge because they started with the concept of branch banking. And now you cannot shut down these branches because the population has also not reduced over a period of time. So they would remain to be one of the biggest. Financial sector as a whole will remain to be one of the biggest employment providers in time to come, and it will remain to be very strong player in the system. But instead of the banks, I use the term now financial sector in general, where banking, capital markets, insurance together will add on and provide one of the best opportunities for young students to join. And if they join through, today in the banking sector, they have started 5 streams of specialization, and you need to have some levels of certification. And that is why I'm happy you call this as a knowledge series, because most of the people should start feeling that they are knowledge workers, that it is information which leads them to deliver their product. It is not manual labor which helps them to deliver their product. So they are knowledge workers, they work on information, and they work on the thinking process to deliver the products whichever they are delivering. So I do agree that there would be consolidation, but the system as such cannot, because you see, we were talking only about public sector banks. You have a huge level of urban cooperative banks. You have a huge level of cooperative banks. You have a huge level of small finance bank. You have now payment banks. You have technology banks. So banking as a part of financial inclusion remains to be one of the
True.
biggest national priority.
Right.
And they have played a biggest role in financial inclusion, in providing access of financial services to the grassroots level. You
So you're
have
saying two things. One, technology would rather increase the jobs in the financial services space than reducing it. The overall banking spectrum would ensure that there are more jobs than ever in this space. Public sector banks will continue to hire. However, there will be consolidation in that space.
there has to be consolidation, because you see, if you want to become strong banks, you cannot be doing the same. 20 banks cannot be doing the same type of business.
Right.
So if they want to do the same type of big business, they have to be larger in, and they have to be a bigger player in the market.
So, sir, there's a student called Charvi. She wants to know, if you had this choice today, would you take up a job in a private bank, RBI, or RBI? Given today's
So
environment, what would you choose?
see, you have to take a call. In the private sector banking or public sector banking, this is commercial banking, where you start as a foot soldier. You have to run around to garner deposits, to uh, onboard clients, to do project finance. So there is a huge gamut of activities which you should be prepared for. Whereas if you join RBI, you are on the other side of the table. So you are the regulatory body which frames the rules, guidelines, roadblocks, uh, and provides the basis on which these banking can happen, and then go on to supervise them and regulate them. So the job patterns are different. I would say that if you can both work in both the sectors. Ideally, if you start with the RBI, work for 15, 20 years in the RBI, and then move on to the private sector banks. You
So
will
you would
be in,
choose RBI today.
even today, there's no doubt about it, because financial sector regulators, see, I would still choose that because that goes with my personality. It need not be, if somebody is wanting much more, a sort of a much more dynamic and day-to-day running around job, they would not be very happy with RBI. It's a desk job. It's a desk job where you
Okay.
look into numbers, where you look into the fact sheets, and you take a policy decision, and then you, through your arms, you want to implement that policy.
There's another thing about your career. I see that you've done a lot of executive education programs from UCLA, Kellogg's, XLRI, NIBM, Columbia's Business School, all the top-notch Ivy League kind of places. But you've not done an MBA. Did the thought of doing an MBA never cross your mind?
No, I think, you see, what happens is we have to take a call. For me, a postgraduate, any postgraduate, is a good place to start with. So whether you are an MCom, whether you are an MA, whether you are an MSc, or whether you are an MBA. And let me also say that MBA charm was there for people, and MBA was able to outrun many of the strong professional programs, mainly because it had a placement component. People joined MBA not to learn management. People joined MBA, and I am part of an IM stream in the sense I'm on their board today, but I can say without offending anybody that if they remove the element of placement from IM, nobody will join the IM. The charm of joining the IM is that you get placed, and charm of doing an MBA from a good place is that you get. So I didn't require that because I was already part of the management team. So I don't want a management qualification to justify being a part of the management team. But those
Right.
who do not have management qualification and want to do the next level of promotion, for them, having a management is a very good thing. So I always advise students that you do a undergrad where you do a certification in banking and finance or insurance or whatever it is, join a bank, and after 3-4 years, when it is time to look at the next level, maybe go and do an MBA. Alternately, if you are very sure that you want to do an MBA before, then you do an MBA, and if you're lucky, you get placed in a bank. Otherwise, you have to go through the same rigor. So
Right.
those days of placements have got over. India has 6,000 plus management institutes. And I can assure you, 98% of these institutions today don't place more than 25 or 30% of their people. So placement is no more a right which one would exercise when they were joining the management stream. And hence, people have, and otherwise also, see, management was a culmination, doing an MBA was a culmination of, you felt I've done an MBA, I'm through. 21st century doesn't encourage this. 21st century, you have to constantly upgrade your skill, and you have to be on the roller coaster of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Unlearning
Right.
part is equally important. If you don't unlearn the things which you did in the past, then learning new things becomes much more difficult. And that is why I took to the other stream of doing executive education from the best of the places who kept me contemporary. It is very important today for people to remain contemporary. It is not the one-time MBA which helps you in any way. It only provides you a gate pass to enter a job. But if you want to be successful and build a career for yourself, you have to constantly keep on doing different levels of executive education as well as certification to be uh, contemporary and employable. It should
Right.
not say that you are no more employable. So
Correct.
although I've now worked for around 40 plus years. I continue to be employable.
So, sir, as you're talking about regular learning, unlearning, and upskilling, uh, when I visited your house, in Mumbai, I felt like I'm stepping inside a library. You know, uh, when did this habit of reading start, and how did you acquire this habit?
So I would say that it was a habit which came up from the school itself. We used to have very good libraries in our school, very good libraries, and we were not only encouraged to read, but there was a compulsion for reading. One day in the week, there would be these book reviews. What is the book you have
Oh,
read in the week? And you have to talk about it for half an hour. So you just can't read the front page and back page and talk for half an hour. That was not possible. So this was both ways very good. It helped you to read so many good books. I feel bad about those students who did not have the pleasure of reading Enid Blyton, W.E. Jones, uh, or Alistair MacLean while growing up. These people have written such wonderful James Hadley Chase. One of the detective books, I'm sure there are a lot of other books now which you can read, but these still continue to be there, and uh, it became part and parcel of our life. And I was fortunate to join an organization like Reserve Bank, which had a book grant scheme.
okay.
Every year you were given 3,000 rupees to buy books. And by the time I retired, this had become 10,000 rupees. So you could buy these books and keep it with you. So people had exercised different choices. Some people took that 3,000 rupees and bought school books for their kids. I bought books for myself and I enjoyed reading it. I was fortunate to get married to a person who also was a voracious reader. And then it continued. I have a very good collection of books, and I feel proud that every year I donate at least 1,000 books to different people or libraries. Wherever I went, all through my stay with HR, uh, I would encourage people in the schools and colleges, and also in our own in the Reserve Bank colleges also, that instead of paying a small honorarium to the faculty, always give them a couple of books which are contemporary and good. And I request the parents that, like they sincerely buy Diwali, Dashera, or holy clothes and gifts for their children, they should also, because I've seen parents getting into, the child wants to get into the bookstore, is looking at a book, is possibly expressing a desire, and the parent will say, "Padhoge to kharido." And that would be, at that point of time, the child would feel, "Chodo yaar, kya karna hai isko." But my parents were also voracious readers, and they encouraged. In fact, we used to have a system that post dinner, you had to read a story. And this
Oh,
helped us to build our communication skills, helped us to get into the listening mode. Because for communication, it is very important. It is one skill which can take you anywhere. If you are an excellent communicator, means you cannot be an excellent communicator until and unless you have content, until and unless you have delivery mechanism, and until and unless you know what the audience wants. So
so here
it
is
helps a
Mr.
lot.
Sandip Ghosh re-emphasizing what we keep telling you at TKWs IBF, the importance of reading books. I urge all the students and alumni and all other spectators who are watching this webinar to learn this amazing habit from Mr. Sandeep Ghosh and read at least one book in a month. Let me tell you, outside his
No,
house, he's no
you
just
are being, Amit, you are being kind to them. I'm giving you an example. and let anybody prove me wrong at the end of the year. I was told once when I did a program in XLRI in 1990, I still remember the coordinator of the program. It was Father McGrath. Father McGrath made a statement: if you read half an hour a day, just half an hour a day, you can read 50 good books in a year.
Wow.
And he also said, and if you don't have half an hour a day, you are busy without work. So I would request people to be voracious readers. It adds tremendous amount of perspective, vision, direction to you. And you come to know so many. See, my experiments with truth, the biography of Mahatma Gandhi. If you're reading my experiments with truth, having a cup of coffee, it is as good as having a cup of coffee with Mahatma Gandhi. The pleasure of reading is so high. So I would urge, basically, there is a saying, people who read are people who lead. And if you don't read, you will never be able to write.
Sir, you are also an authority on personal branding. You train people on personal branding and deliver talks about it. Can you share some examples of things that you did in RBI to establish Sandip Ghosh as a brand?
So one of the, I think nobody called me Ghosh also.
Okay.
Even the governors of RBI would address me as Sandeep wherever they met me. And brand, you try to work on a brand, but that you have been able to establish a brand can only be proved that when you have moved away, people still talk about you. So I cannot say with authority, but if any of the students have any link with RBI and they just raise an issue across the cadre, not only with the top management, but across the cadre, I feel that I'm still remembered there as a brand. I'm remembered there as a brand for two things. I did a long tenure with the governor's office, as you had mentioned in the introduction. 2 years with Dr. Rangarajan, 6 years with Dr. Jalan, and nearly a year or so with Dr. Reddy. And it is Dr. Reddy who told me that after working for 8 years at the top, one place where you can contribute in a very big way is building the HR, because this is the only competitive advantage people in the financial sector have. It is not the different products which are important. If Motilal Oswal launches a product, it can be copied by any other AMC in virtual couple of seconds or minutes. But it will not be able to provide an alternative to Ashish Somaiya at the drop of the hat. So building, the only competitive advantage organizations have is the quality of their HR. And if the HR is good, then anything can be achieved. And I was not inclined at that juncture. And he said, Sandeep, I would like you to go to HR. And he knew that I may not be happy at that point, leaving the governor's office and going to HR. HR was not a very glamorous department during our time. So he added, as a part of my going to HR, he also added that I would be responsible for grooming and capacity building of the top management of commercial banks. So that is how I used to look after both HR and the Bankers Training College, which was an apex training college of RBI. And it helped me to come and connect with a lot of top management of the commercial banks and also participate in their capacity building and strategic thinking. But personal branding, I learned in a different way. And one of the ways I learned personal branding was, and this is a message to the students, that sometimes we feel that if we wear branded clothes or if we wear branded watches or branded glasses, or if we move on branded cars, we get branded. It may not be true. We are the only country in the world where we buy very sophisticated cars, highly technologically sophisticated cars, and sit at the back seat. The pleasure of driving that car is with that driver who is driving the car. It's not with the owner of the car. And I can assure you, if you want to be enjoying the back seat, then you might as well buy a good quality ambassador car. There is no other car than the ambassador car where the back seat is very comfortable. But at the same time, so personal branding came from the thought that, see, when I was growing up, and I had an Omega watch, and whenever I wore it, I would wear a half sleeve shirt and try to show it off to people. And people will see it. They would ask me a lot of things. Acha, you're wearing an Omega. And I thought, later on, I thought that if they didn't think anything else, they thought maybe my parents were well to do. At least that part was there. Unfortunately, in the 21st century, this is no more a fact. Today, if you're wearing an Omega watch, and like me, you're wearing a half sleeve shirt and wanting to show it off, people will look at the watch and they will look at you. And then they will again look at the watch and they will look at you. And believe me, if these two brands don't match, the first thought would be that it has been bought from Hong Kong night market. So the brand is only important if the person who is wearing the brand can also carry the brand. And hence it came from the, why did this concept of personal branding came? I found RBI was a very strong brand in the market. Anybody, when I was working in the RBI, in my initial stages, anybody you told that you are working with the Reserve Bank of India, their eyebrows will go up and they will look at you with some respect. So the brand in the market was very, very strong. However, within the organization, I found people had all sort of complaints against RBI. So then I started working on a concept, how to sell the brand within the organization. Brand is already strong outside. How do you sell this brand within the organization? So that is how working in the HR became a pleasure, how to sell this brand outside, which has such a strong brand outside. And along with that, I would encourage officers to develop a personal brand where people look at them and say, like the Tatas, say they do 100 type of things and they also make steel. So in this, you also work for RBI, but you do 100 type of things. And that is why I today do a lot of personal sessions on personal branding. And I love this subject because I do feel that at the end of the day, if you are a brand, people talk about it.
So there are more than 100 questions which we cannot answer, but a lot of these questions are about what difficulty or challenges did you face. So I would request you to share some difficult situations that you faced early on in your career, in your growth path.
So there was, if you are a mediocre in your class, and you must say every year I would go home with at least 20 cups, and those days it used to be silver cups, and these were performance on the sports.
Sports.
But the report card would say can do better, and you were somewhere ranging between 50 and 55. So it was as bad as that. So you would see that struggle. You would see some type of glitter in the eyes of the parents when they saw the cups, but you will also see that glitter going away very fast when they saw the mark sheets. And you had to get your mark sheet signed by the parents, so you could not get away with it. So one thing was very clear, and this is a lesson which I learned quite early in life, that anything in life which is worth having doesn't come very easy. You have to work towards. You have to work really hard. Harder you work, luckier you get. You don't get lucky by wearing those different type of threads and things like that. You don't get lucky. You just get some coverage from the upper one, but you don't get lucky. You get lucky, harder you work, luckier you get. So I saw a lot of, every time I tried to match my performance on the field with the performance in the class, and it would not happen, and it would be a setback. And I would still say he, this comfort of, I like the word resilience, until and unless you fail, the learnings are not very etched. And if you learn from your failure, then it is never a failure. So I've always felt in life there would be ups and downs. You have to move with it. There's never a rosy picture. When we were growing up, there were a number of racing cars in the family, but you never thought beyond the bicycle. When I was also in the Reserve Bank, I had number of cars, but my children never thought beyond a bicycle. Because you have to be something which you have to earn it on your own merits. If you earn it on your own merits and there is a struggle for it, no problem. Life is a struggle. And life is not fair. Anybody feeling that life is fair, you are living in some world which is not the real world. Life is not fair. Life is full of challenges. In fact, the WhatsApp jokes keep on going on that why are we not scared of shaking hands during Corona? Because we are busy pulling people's leg, we don't pull people's hand. So, so it's something like that. People are so busy. And I would also request the students that when you sit, now the time is right, IPL is on, French Open is on, and when you sit and clap for your heroes in the field, sometimes please find time to clap for yourself. Otherwise, you will only be the viewer and not the doer. You have to be the doer. You have to get on to the field. And don't bother. Failures would be there. If you people are never pick up communication skills because they are so shy of getting up on the stage and saying that people will laugh. Let them laugh. I'm giving you a crude example. Suppose you're walking on one side of the street and on the other side, Rotarian, a dog which is basically classified as a Rotarian, is barking at you. Will you go and console him? Will you say, "Bhai, kya baat hai? Kya problem hai? Kyun kar rahe ho?" You don't. No, you move on. So life, a lot of people will say a lot of things. You move on. Don't lose your focus because people talk about it. I've been taught by my parents, settle down what you want to do, work hard for it, and fall back on good friends if there is a need, but constantly keep your handshake should be your affidavit. It
So, sir,
cannot be.
we have only 1 minute before we have to end this session. So I would like you to share your final words of wisdom on what would you suggest to all the students on how they can become a knowledge worker like you did.
See, sincerely devote 2 to 3 hours every day in sports and in studies. Never miss out a single day. Treat your stomach as your, treat your brain as your stomach. Like you don't take rubbish to your stomach, don't take rubbish to your brain. Stomach doesn't tolerate even one small grain of sand. If it hits your mouth, but we are ready to pack our head with the 98 minute of TV viewing on Riya Chakravarti and Sushant Singh, who are nobody to you. But 98% of our time we are busy in that. You have to move ahead, focus on your studies, work for your whichever program you're working. If you are part of the TKWs Banking Institute, work seriously. And believe me, I'm saying from the other side, we are finding it difficult to get good guys. Good guys always have a place at the top. There is acute shortage of good guys. And if you are good, be on a roller coaster of learning. The only competition you have in life is with yourself. Get out of the comfort zone and sometimes believe that you have to leap before you look. Don't keep on looking before leaping. Leap before you look, and then we'll take care of it. Don't bother. I'm very happy to be part of this Knowledge Worker series, and I'm telling you, you are the future of the country. The students are the future of the country. You can go and do anything you want. The only condition is the want. I want to do it. I have to do it. I will do it. And believe me, it can be done. All the best. If you give your best, life will take care of the rest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for that inspiring session. It was very educating, and I think we'll have to do a few more counseling sessions with you because there's a lot more that we can learn from you. Uh, with that, I thank all the students, alumni, and other people who were attending this session. If you all want to be on this journey of becoming the very best professionals of the country, join us every second Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Make reading books once a week, one book per week a habit. Make attending one such session every month a habit. Next Becoming a Knowledge Worker session will happen on 14th November on Diwali. Yeah, so we are going to have this session on Diwali. I look forward to seeing all of you on that day. Thank you so much for joining. We have not been able to answer all your questions. We will try and address some of them through comments in Facebook and YouTube, and we will try and take up more questions in our future sessions. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.